We'll end up with a massive headache if we try to dig into them right now. For the time being, it's better to just watch. If we keep investigating with only one goal in mind, we'll just bring trouble onto ourselves. Her judgment was cautious, but it was also realistic. Mrs. Nanny gave a small chuckle at that. A wise decision, my lady. Despite all the attempts made against the young master, he has still grown up healthy and strong. You don't need to worry so much. Her words were meant to comfort Luna Runcandle, even if only a little. The scene shifted back to Jean Runcandle. The moment he stepped inside, he called out in a bright voice, "Gilly McLaurin, Murakin, I'm back." There was a rare ease in his expression, the kind that only appeared when he returned alive from danger. Gilly McLaurin was so overwhelmed at the sight of him that she nearly teared up on the spot. "Young master, I am so glad you came back safely." Her relief was plain to see, written across her face and trembling voice. Jean Runcandle quickly tried to reassure her. "I'm fine. I'm strong. Before long, you probably won't even be able to beat me anymore." He said it lightly, almost teasingly, but Gilly McLaurin was still deeply shaken. She gripped his hand tightly and said, "That place was extremely dangerous. If anything had happened to you, I would have thrown my life away for revenge." Hearing such dramatic loyalty from the side, Murakin immediately broke out in a cold sweat. "Little Strawberry, don't say terrifying things like that," Murakin muttered, visibly uncomfortable. Then he turned toward Jean Runcandle and asked in a more serious voice, "Hey, kid, did you report everything properly?" Jean Runcandle answered at once, "Yes. By now, everyone probably thinks I only succeeded because I had help, but honestly, I don't care about that." Then his tone changed. "More importantly, take a look at this, both of you." Murakin's curiosity was immediately piqued. "Huh? What is it?" Jean Runcandle took out the jar containing the stone fragment he had recovered from the golem and held it up for them to see. Then he explained in a calm but serious tone, "This is the heart of a primeval golem." The words fell heavily, making the object inside the jar seem even more ominous than it already looked. The two of them leaned in and studied the jar with open curiosity. Murakin was the first to react, and he could not hide his surprise. "You're lucky. Since you came back in one piece, that means the golem must have failed somehow. I figured you just found this in the ruins afterward." But Jean Runcandle calmly revealed the truth, and it was far worse than that. "The two guards there turned into monsters and attacked me. No matter where I cut them, they kept recovering. This thing only fell out after I stabbed through their hearts." His voice stayed level, but the memory itself was clearly anything but ordinary. Hearing that, Murakin could not help but gasp inwardly. A primeval golem. The very name alone carried a weight that made the room feel colder. First it was giant living armor, and now it's a primeval golem. Just what the hell is the Zippel clan trying to do? After a brief moment of thought, Murakin spoke again, more seriously than before. "If what you're saying is true, then this is probably one of the Zippel clan's secret masterpieces. And you said those ruins are inside their territory, right?" Jean Runcandle nodded without hesitation. "That's right." Murakin heard that and fell into thought for a moment, his expression darkening as he considered what it meant. Take some time off," Murakin finally said. "You and I need to go back to that place." Hearing that, Jean Runcandle lowered his gaze in surprise, clearly not expecting such a quick decision. Murakin explained with a serious face, "I think I need to question them directly." There was no trace of his usual laziness in that moment. What the hell is really going on over there? While Murakin spoke, Jean Runcandle also weighed it over in his own mind. He was hesitant to return because of the primeval golems, but with Murakin beside him, it would certainly be safer. And if luck was on his side, he might even be able to find the mana fountain while he was there. No matter how he looked at it, the Zippel clan would try to bury the whole matter and cover it up anyway. After thinking it through, Jean Runcandle nodded and gave his answer. "All right, I'll make some time for it." He had already decided that this was something he could not ignore. Right after the mission was completed, Kajin Romero and the Haas brothers also returned to the Runcandle clan. Meanwhile, Mew Runcandle and Runcandle had their cadet titles revoked and were expelled from the clan. For cadets, it was an extremely harsh punishment, but not a single person felt sorry for them. Then, in June of 1795, another heavy impact rang out somewhere, followed by a sharp shout. Stop! Elder Chiron Runcandle spoke with grave authority. Jean Runcandle, starting today, your pure stone training is over. From tomorrow onward, only the Tana twins will come. Jean Runcandle answered respectfully. Yes, uncle. Only Haytona Runcandle, standing in the back, heard those words and ended up with tears streaming down her face from pure admiration. I'm so jealous, she thought. Then Elder Chiron Runcandle continued. Also, Jean Runcandle, it seems your morning training with the cadets is no longer necessary. Next week, the clan head wishes to speak with you personally. That announcement made the twin brothers' jaws drop on the spot, while Jean Runcandle himself remained outwardly calm, as if he had already expected something like this might come. The two of them immediately started whispering to each other, though their voices were loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Could it be, does father want Jean Runcandle to become a temporary flag bearer already? A temporary flag bearer means he'll have to leave the Runcandle clan and earn honor on his own before becoming a true flag bearer, right? Yeah, he'd have to move alone, without any help from the clan. Their voices carried both amazement and disbelief. Later, once he was in a place where no one could see him, Jean Runcandle clenched his fist tightly and cheered to himself in silence. Finally, I won't have to keep worrying about others getting in my way, and I can grow stronger exactly the way I want. At that thought, he could not hold it back any longer and broke into a genuinely happy smile. It was the kind of smile that came from deep relief, not pride. The scene shifted once again, this time to the outside world. Chiron Runcandle's group was still advancing along the road, their steady march continuing without pause beneath the open sky. Khan, walking a step behind, spoke up. Clan head, we're only about 2 hours away from the Sword Garden now. Chiron Runcandle answered with a helpless sigh. That son I had in my later years is really something else. He keeps interrupting my training. At one point, I even considered shutting myself away in the Black Sea for 10 years. But now, how many years has it already been? Khan did not hold back his praise as he continued. Ever since the Thunder God stage, I already felt that young Master Jean Runcandle was no ordinary child. But I never imagined he would turn out to be this extraordinary. The things he has done in the Sword Garden truly left me stunned. After hearing that, Chiron Runcandle fell silent for a moment and gave the matter real thought. His expression suggested that Khan's words had struck very close to the truth. That kid's fighting spirit is no joke, Chiron Runcandle finally said. Even when he was still very young, from the first time I saw him on the Thunder God platform, his eyes were always burning with hatred. His tone was calm, but there was no mistaking how clearly he remembered it. Even though he tried to hide it, I still can't forget the way he immediately provoked his older brothers the moment he entered the Sword Garden. To Chiron Runcandle, that memory was far too vivid to dismiss as childish recklessness. I'm sure no one ever taught him to do that. And yet, as the youngest, he instinctively understood the law of the jungle there, that if he wanted to survive, he had to eliminate his rivals first. Back then, the young Jean Runcandle had spoken with complete confidence. However, father, I'm talented at getting rid of my enemies too. The other children understood that much, so they tried to corner the boy and pressure him however they could. And yet, when everything was over, the mission had still been completed. That result alone said more than any excuse or complaint ever could. Just look at the outcome. The announcement soon followed. The youngest young master had successfully completed the Collins Relic mission. No matter how many times his older brothers pushed him toward danger and death, he always survived, came back, and stood there again. He's already reached the 5-star level now. To be honest, Khan said, speaking with clear admiration for Jean Runcandle, it wasn't the ruins incident alone that caught my attention. It was the very first mission you assigned to the young master. He had to face an entire white wolf tribe by himself, and even so, he still managed to win. The clan head did not reject that praise. Instead, he agreed with it. Yes, I also assumed he would use his retainers as shields and wipe out the white wolf tribe that way. But who would have guessed he would handle it personally? By doing that, he proved that the vows he made to me were not empty words. Then Khan asked again, wanting to be certain. Clan head, do you truly believe he wiped out the white wolf tribe entirely by himself? Khan's question came out carefully, but the curiosity in it was obvious. Chiron Runcandle answered without the slightest pause. Of course. Then, in a more serious tone, he added, well, if we want to be exact, it wasn't entirely by himself. But even so, he's an interesting child. This time, I intend to ask him about it properly. As their conversation continued, the massive gate finally came into view right before them, towering in the distance like a silent wall. Chiron Runcandle stepped down with a commanding, majestic presence, every movement carrying the natural authority of the clan head. On both sides, two neat lines of soldiers stood waiting and welcomed him with utmost respect. A unified chorus rang through the air. Greetings, clan head. Rosa Runcandle and Luna Runcandle were also standing there to receive him in person. Rosa Runcandle spoke first. We have been waiting for you, clan head. Chiron Runcandle walked forward and gave his praise. Rosa, you've done very well. Rosa Runcandle briefly glanced at Joshua Runcandle, who was standing beside her as if presenting himself, and said, not at all. He prepared everything himself, so there was hardly anything left for me to do. Chiron Runcandle continued in a dry tone. If, as you say, these grown children are already handling things so well on their own, then perhaps I had no reason to leave the Black Sea at all. Those words made Joshua Runcandle freeze where he stood, and his expression stiffened immediately. The guest we are receiving today is likely to be very sensitive to my presence. Wouldn't that only make things harder for my children instead? His words sounded casual on the surface, but the meaning behind them was sharp. As he walked past, he could not help casting Rosa Runcandle a dissatisfied glance, the kind that revealed his thoughts without him needing to say anything more. Rosa Runcandle, not noticing that look, continued speaking brightly. That's right. For 10 full days, we've prepared all your favorite dishes. Chiron Runcandle answered, well done. I'm truly looking forward to it. His reply was calm, but his eyes were already moving elsewhere. Then, in that very moment, Chiron Runcandle's sharp gaze caught on something unusual. It was the sight of 2 swords hanging at someone's belt, tucked there in a way that immediately drew his attention. Then Chiron Runcandle called out, Jean Runcandle. Vigo Runcandle. Vigo Runcandle, already starting to sweat, answered, yes, father. Chiron Runcandle asked at once, did you hand over the sword I gave you to the youngest? Vigo Runcandle hesitated, clearly unsure how to answer. That was all he managed to say at first. In the end, he could only answer honestly. Our youngest brother took it from us. We told him that if he completed the Collins Ruins mission, we would give it to him, so. Before Vigo Runcandle could even finish explaining, Chiron Runcandle suddenly broke into an amused, delighted smile. Then he burst into hearty laughter that echoed around them, unable to hold it back at all. Ha! Laughing, he placed a hand on Jean Runcandle's shoulder and said, well done. Just remember to find a way to take it back later. The youngest is pretty clever, isn't he? Sometimes I honestly wonder whether he's really my son. The words were playful, but the pride behind them was impossible to miss. Some time later, Chiron Runcandle was standing beside Jean Runcandle. He spoke first in a calmer voice. This must be your first time attending a ball like this, right? Jean Runcandle answered politely. Yes, father. As he said that, Jean Runcandle thought quietly to himself. In my past life, thanks to my master, I was able to attend a few balls hosted by other clans. But never once was I allowed to attend a ball hosted by the main family itself. And on the rare occasions when I was invited to something similar, I always hid myself away like a criminal, keeping my head down in the shadows. But now, I'm standing here beside my father as an honored guest. Of course, that change had only come at the cost of dying once before. A cold light flickered in his eyes. At that moment, Chiron Runcandle continued. As you probably already know, our clan does not hold balls very often. That is because we only do so on truly meaningful and celebratory occasions. That also means your achievement is something worth recognizing. Jean Runcandle replied in a calm, respectful voice. Thank you, father. Then Chiron Runcandle clapped his son on the shoulder and asked, how many guests do you think will be here tonight? Jean Runcandle gave his estimate without much hesitation. I think around 1,000 people. Chiron Runcandle nodded in agreement. That's right. I heard we will be welcoming about that many guests. That's roughly 200 more than the last ball we held 7 years ago. Do you know what that means? He asked again. Jean Runcandle answered just as calmly. It means our family's reputation has grown over the past 7 years. Other clans may also hold balls with 1,000 guests, but the people gathered here today are all exceptionally influential and outstanding figures. Jean Runcandle understood that this number was not just about size, but about weight. For the last 7 years, all I have done is train and kill monsters in the Black Sea, Chiron Runcandle said, as though stating something simple and obvious. And even so, our clan's reputation has only continued to rise. That is because I am the only Genesis Knight of this era. His voice remained steady, but the truth of those words was enormous. That means if I were to disappear, there is a high chance that most of the people gathered here would immediately turn their backs on the Runcandle family. It was not self-praise. It was a blunt statement of reality. After hearing that, Jean Runcandle admitted inwardly, "That's true. Without father, how could the Runcandle clan possibly maintain this level of overwhelming prestige? My clan and the Zippel clan may be the two greatest powers now, but the moment father disappears, the gap in military strength between us will keep widening. In the end, the Zippel clan would become the single strongest force." The thought was cold, but it was also honest. Then Jean Runcandle slowly clenched his hand into a fist, as if gathering his resolve, and finally spoke up. "Father, if you were gone, and all these people turned their backs on us, and the Zippel clan stepped in to crush us while we were already falling, driving us into a dead end, then I would abandon this clan." He said it with a calm face, almost shockingly calm for such words. Hearing that, Chiron Runcandle stared at him in open disbelief. "What?" The single word came out harsher than expected. Jean Runcandle explained immediately, without wavering. "If the Runcandle clan collapses just because you are no longer here, then that only proves the next clan head is incompetent. I have no intention of dying a meaningless death under a clan head like that. How many weaknesses of other families does our clan currently hold?" Hearing this sudden shift in topic, Chiron Runcandle asked in confusion, "Weaknesses?" "Yes," Jean Runcandle replied right away. "In exchange for returning the sword I took from Brother Vigo Runcandle, I asked him to show me the cooperation contracts that only the flag bearers are allowed to read. The head of the Vange family deceived the emperor and embezzled money from the national treasury. But because they are backed by us, they can still shamelessly appear at this ball. The Clam family recently asked us to help them eliminate Zippel clan mages. The young lady of the Herald family secretly sold off her family's treasures to feed her gambling addiction, and they asked us to retrieve them. Oh, and they still haven't paid the cooperation fee either. Just from looking at those alone, I already learned plenty of weaknesses that can kill people without ever drawing a blade. And there must be many more hidden in the contracts that only you and Mother are allowed to see." Chiron Runcandle could not help but ask in genuine amazement. "So even without me, you mean this family could still protect itself using those things?" Jean Runcandle answered with complete confidence. "If the person leading the Runcandle clan is not a Genesis Knight, then success or failure depends entirely on how skilled they are at negotiation and pressure." "That's true," Chiron Runcandle admitted. "However, we're not the only ones holding other people's weaknesses. The Zippel clan also possesses just as many secrets in their hands as we do." Jean Runcandle replied without sounding surprised at all. "I know, but the Zippel clan will never be able to use those things as effectively as we can." Chiron Runcandle looked at his young, yet strangely composed son and fell into thought, studying him with growing interest. "Why is that?" he asked. Jean Runcandle answered at once. "Because playing the villain is the Runcandle clan's role. So if the next clan head possesses that many weapons and still cannot use them properly, then I will definitely abandon this clan without a moment of hesitation. After that, I would spend however many years it took preparing to take revenge on the Zippel clan." Chiron Runcandle listened to those fearless words, then rubbed his chin and smiled, clearly finding his youngest son's answer far more interesting than shocking. "Haha, revenge, is it? I see." Chiron Runcandle let out a low laugh before adding, "Well, you need to stay alive first if you want revenge." "Not bad." There was approval in his voice, rough and blunt, but unmistakably real. After saying that, He glanced at his youngest son again and thought to himself that the others would never dare speak of the Runcandle clan collapsing right in front of him. They would either lie to please him or break down and whine. But the youngest had calmly laid out his true intentions with startling intelligence. A satisfied smile slowly rose at the corner of Chiron Runcandle's mouth, small but impossible to hide. What a shame that I had him so late, he thought. It feels like he carries Luna Runcandle's talent, Mary Runcandle's beast-like instinct, and Dyphus Runcandle's battle sense all at once. I will hold the position of Runcandle clan head for 10 more years at the very least, 15 at most. At this rate, I may actually live to see whether the youngest can shake the succession of this clan to its core. After working that out in his mind, Chiron Runcandle turned and began walking away, saying as he went, "It seems most of our guests have already arrived. Let's go inside." Jean Runcandle answered respectfully, "Yes, father." Then, after only a short distance, Chiron Runcandle spoke again. "Oh, and after the party, there's something I want to discuss with you. Stay where you are until I call for you." Hearing that, Jean Runcandle quietly clenched his fist and thought, the evaluation to become a flag bearer. It looks like once the party is over, I'll be leaving the clan for a while, at least temporarily. These next few days of feasting are going to feel very long. Jean Runcandle looked at Chiron Runcandle's back and smiled faintly to himself. But just then, a servant came rushing in with panic written all over his face and called out, "Clan head." Chiron Runcandle stopped and asked sharply, "What is it now?" The servant hurriedly replied, "An uninvited guest has arrived." Hearing that, Chiron Runcandle's expression turned skeptical at once. What? A bad feeling rose in his chest. An uninvited guest? It couldn't possibly be the Zipple clan. And indeed, below them stood a group of figures dressed in secretive clothing. Chiron Runcandle asked with a hard face, "What? The Zipple clan?" The servant answered immediately, "Yes, sir. There are 5 of them in total." "Who is it?" "The second son, Veridin Zipple." At that, Chiron Runcandle could not help cursing under his breath in anger. What an insolent pack. Then Chiron Runcandle gave Hanser an order. "Tell Veridin Zipple to get lost. Let only the other 4 clan members in. Don't go yourself. Send another servant." Hanser bowed right away and answered, "Yes, sir." As for Jean Runcandle, he remained standing behind them, quietly calculating. It was true that arriving without notice like this was extremely rude, but to shut out the second son of the Zipple clan so completely that he was not even allowed through the gate. Just then, Chiron Runcandle suddenly turned back and fixed him with a sharp, questioning look. "Do you think my handling of this was too harsh?" Jean Runcandle immediately replied, "No, I think it was refreshing." The moment Veridin Zipple let emotion overtake reason and walked in with his people, he disregarded the permission of the Runcandle clan head and treated the Sword Garden as though it meant nothing. That was not something anyone could simply overlook in the Sword Garden, just as you said. Veridin Zipple will either obey my words, or he'll be leaving his 2 legs behind before he gets to go home. The threat was spoken so casually that it felt even colder. "It's time to begin the party," Chiron Runcandle said, and then he continued walking forward without another pause. When he arrived in front of the hall and stood high above the gathered crowd, Chiron Runcandle raised his voice and spoke loudly. "Thank you all for coming. I am Chiron Runcandle, head of the Runcandle clan, and it is also thanks to the son I had in my later years that I have the pleasure of standing here like this today. So first, I would like to thank my youngest son, Jean Runcandle." After being introduced like that, Jean Runcandle, standing beside him, gave a calm and polite nod. Chiron Runcandle then continued, "As all of you already know, at a Runcandle feast, there are only 2 rules you truly need to keep in mind. First, if anyone gets drunk and starts a fight, the knights will drag them straight to the arena. The loser must surrender, and the winner must show mercy to the defeated. Because no matter what else this is, it is still a party." His words sounded almost civilized, but the atmosphere beneath them was anything but gentle. After hearing that, Jean Runcandle could not help glancing to the side and muttering inwardly in disbelief. So this is what a Runcandle banquet is really like. This was a gathering of over 1,000 of the most influential people on the continent, and every one of them was tangled in complicated alliances, grudges, debts, and hidden intentions. If this had been an ordinary party, They would have exchanged a few polite insults wrapped in smiles and left it at that. But this was a celebration being held in the Sword Garden. As long as they obeyed the two rules laid down by Chiron Runcandle, they could not kill their enemies, but they could still beat them badly enough to make a very public statement, and from that moment on they would officially be seen as the stronger side. After the announcement, Chiron Runcandle concluded with, "Now then, everyone, enjoy yourselves." Standing beside him, Jean Runcandle gave a quiet sneer in his heart. This clan is truly insane. Just then, Chiron Runcandle turned toward Jean Runcandle and added, "You too." Jean Runcandle looked at him in confusion for a moment. Then Chiron Runcandle continued, as if giving perfectly ordinary instructions. "If you spot anyone suitable, you may drag them out as well. But you're not allowed to challenge anyone who clearly looks weaker than you, unless that person has insulted you or insulted this clan." Jean Runcandle smiled, clearly pleased, and answered, "Yes. And I also understand that no matter what happens, I'm not allowed to lose." As Chiron Runcandle kept walking, he tossed a few more words behind him. "Of course, if you lose, I'll take back everything you've gained. Not just the sword, but your status as well." Behind him, Jean Runcandle lowered his head and answered, "I will remember that." Then he looked at his father's back and thought, looking at it now, this is the first time I've ever been able to speak with my father like this. It was the kind of moment I would not have even dared to dream about in my previous life. Just now, that really was a fairly harmonious conversation between father and son. But building a close father-son bond, or becoming some dutiful son, was never part of my plans in this life. In this life, the only thing I truly want is to surpass my father. That is what matters most. At that same time, people below in the hall were already gathering in clusters, talking, laughing, watching one another, and carefully measuring the room. Jean Runcandle was standing alone with a glass of water in hand when the Tana twins suddenly appeared on either side of him, both wearing excited expressions. "Ha ha! Congratulations on reaching 5-star, Jean Runcandle." The two clapped him on the shoulder with bright smiles and added, "It's fine if we talk for a bit, right?" Jean Runcandle answered at once, "Of course." Then he politely asked in return, "How is your training going?" Haytona Runcandle, when asked, answered cheerfully, "Much better. Ever since switching to the weapon you suggested, my training has improved a lot." "Is that so?" Jean Runcandle replied, sounding genuinely pleased. "Congratulations, then." After that, Jean Runcandle leaned in slightly and whispered, "Just stay and watch until you've had enough of the show, all right?" The twins immediately broke into a cold sweat. Okay." At that very moment, someone approached and spoke up. "It's a pleasure to meet you, young Master Jean Runcandle of the clan." "I am." Jean Runcandle quickly cut the man off and said, "Ah, you are the first flag bearer of the clan." The Tana twins also bowed their heads together and greeted him in unison. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Then the twins forced out awkward smiles and said, "We'll be going now, Jean Runcandle." Jean Runcandle replied in an easy, friendly tone, "All right. Good luck with your training." "Uh-huh. Thank you." And with that, the two hurried off together almost as if they were rolling away. Now left behind, Jean Runcandle offered the first flag bearer a polite greeting of his own. "When I was young, I heard many stories about your bravery." The first flag bearer stroked his chin and answered with a small smile, "You're being too kind." Just then, before the moment could settle, someone else appeared from behind and casually patted Jean Runcandle on the head. "Hey, Jean Runcandle." The newcomer wore an excited grin and said, "I was wondering what kind of monster could reach 5-star at 15, but it turns out you're just a kid. You have to be at least 10 years younger than me. Nice to meet you. My name is Hugh Jerome Henserk." Caught slightly off guard, Jean Runcandle went silent for a moment. Then he slowly looked up with a sharp little smile and returned the greeting. "Yeah, nice to meet you too, Hugh Jerome Henserk." Still sounding playful, Hugh Jerome Henserk teased him. "You're a tense little kid, aren't you? I was a bit rude, sure, but you're reacting like I'm some complete bastard. You may be a Runcandle, but in the martial world, I'm still your senior." After saying that, Hugh Jerome Henserk coolly brushed back his hair as if he had just delivered something impressive, his smug attitude making the moment even more irritating. Hugh Jerome Henserk quickly added, "I was only showing a little affection toward my junior." Why are you so tense? Jean Runcandle looked straight at him and replied in a calm but sharp tone. Then listen carefully. Hugeron Hensirk of the Hensirk clan, what you just did was an insult to the people who have treated me with proper respect. Jean Runcandle stood there with his back straight and his expression steady as he laid out the accusation without the slightest hesitation. If you want to pull the senior-junior card, then you should at least know how to act with some care and consideration. After being called out so directly, Hugeron Hensirk could only stare for a moment before blurting out in genuine surprise. What? Jean Runcandle did not stop there. He immediately listed them one by one. The first and second flag bearers of the clan, the Royal Dragon Knights, the Black King Mercenary Group. Aren't they all your seniors too? You saw perfectly well how they treated me. So acknowledge your mistake and apologize to them. Hugeron Hensirk's face twisted in a strange way, making it hard to tell whether he was embarrassed, offended, or simply stunned. Jean Runcandle continued coldly. Since I've already corrected you here, I'll let this matter end with that. At that moment, the first flag bearer stepped in, patted Hugeron Hensirk on the shoulder, and tried to smooth things over. Oh ho, my Hugh. Young Master Jean Runcandle just saved your life. I'd advise you to listen. The seniors beside them also stepped in to calm the tension. It's fine. I've always known that big mouth of yours would get you into trouble one day. Just let it go. No need to make things more awkward than they already are. After hearing that, Hugeron Hensirk scratched his head and muttered, if all my seniors are saying so. Once he finally made up his mind, Hugeron Hensirk bowed respectfully toward Jean Runcandle. My sincere apologies, seniors. Please forgive this junior's mistake. Young Master Jean Runcandle, I also hope you will accept my apology. Jean Runcandle answered matter-of-factly. Of course, Sir Hugeron Hensirk. After that, Hugeron Hensirk had no choice but to swallow his pride and step away. Then a voice rose beside Jean Runcandle. You're really talented at making enemies. It would be nice if you could act like a normal kid once in a while. Luna Runcandle had appeared in a beautiful off-the-shoulder blue dress. Jean Runcandle was genuinely surprised and called out, Sister Luna. The two then began walking together. Jean Runcandle said, Today, I'm representing the Runcandle clan. There was a calm seriousness in his tone, as if he wanted to make clear that everything he had just done had a purpose. Luna Runcandle nodded lightly. You're right. Still, she gave him a warning. But what if Hugeron Hensirk actually challenges you to a duel? He looked at least 6-star, maybe more. Jean Runcandle replied with quiet confidence. If he dared to do that, the clan head and the elders of the Hensirk family would step in first. They've been watching us this whole time. On the other side, one of the seniors was still scolding Hugeron Hensirk. I told you to watch your mouth. Thanks to young Master Jean Runcandle, you got out of this alive. Luna Runcandle glanced over at them and said, Oh, so when you decided how to respond, you were calculating their reactions too. Did some nobles secretly teach you how to handle people like this? Jean Runcandle slowly swirled the water in his glass and answered, If there really were a teacher for that, I'd be more than happy to learn. Luna Runcandle looked puzzled and said, You only need to learn swordsmanship. What do things like this even matter for? He answered her right away. It may be a little hard for you to understand, but as the ostracized young master of the Runcandle family, I need more than swordsmanship if I want to survive. Luna Runcandle tilted her head, a question plain in her eyes. Is that so? She murmured. But inwardly, Luna Runcandle could not help being impressed. He's so sharp, so bright. Maybe that's exactly why someone tried to kill him back at the Thunder God platform. I wonder who it was, the sibling who recognized Jean Runcandle's talent that early. After thinking about it, Luna Runcandle spoke again. Anyway, I only came because this is a party celebrating you. But honestly, this kind of thing just isn't my style. I'm going to go find something more fun to do. Jean Runcandle blinked in surprise. Already. Luna Runcandle immediately replied, Yeah, you're still too short to dance with me. When you grow up a little more, let's dance together. I'll take you somewhere really fun. Jean Runcandle answered with a faint smile. I'll look forward to it, sister. Then Luna Runcandle suddenly said, Oh, before I go, I should probably leave behind a message for the others, the way you did, right, Jean Runcandle? Hearing that, he could only look at her in confusion. What do you mean? Luna Runcandle did not answer directly. Instead, she suddenly placed a hand on Jean Runcandle's head and gently pulled him closer, almost like she was affectionately petting him. The sudden gesture left him completely bewildered. Then Luna Runcandle gave him a playful wink and said, "If I do this, everyone will understand that I think very highly of you. After this, most people will be too wary of me to treat you rudely. See you later." Jean Runcandle remained frozen in the same position for a moment, still trying to process what had just happened. "Why yes, goodbye, sister." As soon as Luna Runcandle walked away, the people nearby immediately began whispering among themselves. "Wow, is that really the white whale? I know, right? She must be incredibly fond of her youngest brother." Not far away, someone else was biting down on a handkerchief and hissing through clenched teeth. "Ugh, I'm so jealous." The envy was so intense it almost looked painful. "One day, Bishcalibriano, I want Lady Luna Runcandle to touch my head too." Bubear Gaston bit clean through the handkerchief in excitement. "I feel inspired today. I'm absolutely going to write a poem praising Lady Luna Runcandle, and I will recite it all night long." Bishcalibriano could only grimace, a chill running down his spine from how unhinged that sounded. "Can you just shut up already?" Bishcalibriano snapped. But even then, Bubear Gaston still looked deeply wronged over the fact that Luna Runcandle had touched her brother's head so naturally. At that moment, a girl with shoulder-length blue hair, sitting in a wheelchair, looked up and spoke in a calm voice. "Don't be like that, brother. This probably means a great deal to Mr. Bubear Gaston. This is his story too, and it's because of you that I can enjoy this party in the Sword Garden. So we should respect him a little more." Hearing that, Bishcalibriano could only cover his face in helpless surrender. Bubear Gaston, on the other hand, looked delighted. As expected of Miss Margiela Ibriano. "You understand me so well." Then he brightened further. "It is my honor to escort you." "Oh my. Thank you, Mr. Bubear Gaston," she replied politely. Meanwhile, Jean Runcandle stood alone off to one side, and could not help letting out a quiet sigh as he watched the scene unfold around him. Humph. Once those people were gone, he thought to himself with tired amusement, playing the lead role is exhausting. And where are those damn Zipple bastards anyway? It's annoying, but should I go find them myself? Jean Runcandle started calculating the possibilities again, his mind already moving ahead of the crowd. Just then, a glass was set down on the table in front of him with enough force to startle him, pulling him out of his thoughts. A familiar hairstyle came into view, followed by a smooth voice. "I wonder whether this young lady might be allowed to share a drink with the rising star of the Runcandle family." Ceres Indorma appeared wearing a terrifyingly dark expression, one that looked elegant on the surface but carried a very different mood underneath. Jean Runcandle pretended not to recognize her and asked, "And you are?" Ceres Indorma stepped closer and introduced herself in a composed tone. "Ceres Indorma of the Hidden Palace." She gave him a sly little smile, the kind that made it impossible to tell whether she was joking, testing him, or both. "It's an honor to meet you, young Master Jean Runcandle." Jean Runcandle answered with the same calm smile, mirroring her tone neatly. "Ceres Indorma of the Hidden Palace, the honor is mine." "It is truly a pleasure to meet you, Lady Ceres Indorma." His words sounded polite and proper, but his eyes were carefully measuring every shift in her expression. As he poured wine into her glass, Jean Runcandle said with practiced courtesy, "You are the daughter of the Hidden Palace Master. I should be the one feeling honored." Ceres Indorma continued, "You're the same age as me. How did you become this strong at such a young age? I really envy the Runcandle clan's inborn physique." Jean Runcandle answered without false modesty, "I think that's a blessing too." Then he returned the compliment. "But the Hidden Palace also carries an extraordinary bloodline. I can only imagine how treasured you must be as the Hidden Palace Master's daughter." Ceres Indorma replied with equal confidence, "That's right. I'm her only daughter, unlike you." The words slipped out before she seemed to realize how pointed they sounded. As if noticing her own mistake, she quickly covered her mouth and corrected herself. "I hope that didn't sound rude." Jean Runcandle, showing surprising composure, answered, "Not at all. Everyone already knows I'm the youngest son in a house full of older siblings. Honestly, I envy you quite a bit. Having many siblings can be exhausting." Jean Runcandle replied carefully, but inwardly his thoughts were moving elsewhere. Strange. She definitely recognizes me. Then why hasn't she brought up what happened at the ruins? There's no way she didn't see me clearly back then. I didn't even have dirt on my face. At that moment, Ceres Endorma lifted her wine glass and said with a suddenly serious expression, "Now then, young master, there's something I'd like to ask you." Jean Runcandle immediately answered, "Of course. Please, go ahead, Lady Ceres Endorma." Ceres Endorma's expression turned dark and sharp. "How is your injured leg?" Just as expected, a faint smile remained on Jean Runcandle's lips, but the air between them had already turned colder and heavier. Then he answered openly, "It's fine now, thanks to a kind person who personally applied medicine to it. I'm honestly not sure how I should repay that kindness." Ceres Endorma answered with a trace of sarcasm, "You're even thicker-skinned than I expected, young Master Jean Runcandle." "So why were you at the Moonwell in Mummet?" she pressed. "I think I'm owed an explanation. Because of that, my subordinate failed to track down the terrorist using magic there. That cost me quite a bit of face. Naturally, it also made me wonder whether the young man I let walk away that day was actually the culprit." Jean Runcandle listened without flinching and then answered calmly, "You said magic. As you can plainly see, I'm a Runcandle. Do I honestly look like a suspect to you? I'm sure you know very well what kind of clan I come from." Ceres Endorma responded in a cold, measured voice, "I don't think you were the terrorist. But the fact remains that you were on a mission for the Runcandle clan at that time. Maybe you hired outside help because you couldn't complete that mission yourself. And the only people who could have been the Runcandle clan's target, there were members of the Hidden Palace. That's why I think you were there. And that's not something I can simply ignore." After hearing that, Jean Runcandle quietly turned the matter over in his head. Honestly, her suspicion was not completely baseless. While he had been trying to kill Karo, he really had ended up injuring someone connected to the secret palace as well. From her point of view, it was easy to see how those pieces would fit together into something ugly. Even after thinking it through, he denied it once more without wavering. "I still don't understand why that makes me a suspect. That's nothing more than a guess, isn't it?" Ceres Endorma let out a low chuckle, but there was no warmth in it. "Huh. So you really plan to deny it until the very end? Fine. In that case, I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to drag you into the arena, beat you until you can't stand, and then spit on that filthy face of yours." Her voice was sharp and cold, carrying the kind of fury that made it clear she meant every single word. As she said it, she lifted a finger and pointed it straight at his face with open arrogance, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "I'm challenging you," she declared, her eyes blazing. "A one-on-one fight. Right here." Jean Runcandle answered with a line so full of contempt that it made the air feel even heavier. "My father warned me not to fight people weaker than me." For a second, Ceres Endorma just stared at him, visibly stunned. She could hardly believe he had looked down on her so openly, right to her face. Then Jean Runcandle smiled, almost lazily, and continued in a calm voice. "But if you want to fight that badly, then I suppose I don't have much choice but to accept." Hearing that, Ceres Endorma slowly lifted her head, glaring up at him as if his relaxed attitude itself was an insult. That indifferent expression only fueled her anger further. Not long after, Jean Runcandle and Ceres Endorma headed out to make preparations. Someone nearby spoke up the moment they arrived. "Young master, you've come to fight?" Jean Runcandle answered at once, sounding perfectly composed. "Yes, everyone else can leave. Only the people responsible for treatment should remain. Oh, and bring me 2 regulation swords." The knight immediately bowed and obeyed. "Understood. We will seal the arena until the match between the two of you is finished." The arrangements moved quickly, as if the tension itself was pushing everyone to act faster. Then Jean Runcandle stood there quietly, watching the situation unfold from the rear. He thought to himself that if word spread, fellow trainees and spectators would flood the arena to watch. She was the daughter of the secret palace, after all. Beating her thoroughly in front of a crowd would be far too cruel, even for him. Suddenly, Ceres Endorma spoke, her tone firm and icy. "Jean Runcandle, understand this clearly before we begin." Her voice cut through the silence, forcing all attention onto her. Jean Runcandle looked at her and asked in return, "What is it?" His voice was casual, but his eyes stayed fixed on her, alert and unreadable. Ceres Dorma laid out her condition without hesitation. If I win, you will tell me everything that happened that day in Mummet. No lies. Not one. Jean Runcandle accepted immediately. Fine. I accept. Then he added his own condition in return. If I win, then let's act as if you and I never met that day. Ceres Dorma instantly caught the gap in his wording and shot back. So you are hiding something. Then, no longer willing to waste another breath, she shouted, Come. The moment those words left her mouth, Jean Runcandle raised his sword and moved first. As he stepped in, his sharp eyes flicked briefly to the side, scanning everything around him in a single practiced sweep. Even in the opening instant of battle, he missed nothing. Their swords collided with a violent crash, and the impact sent out a heavy shock wave through the arena. The force of that first clash alone was enough to make it obvious that neither of them intended to hold back. This is it, Jean Runcandle thought as he measured his opponent. It was a kind of judgment made possible by the instincts of the Runcandle bloodline. Ceres Dorma pressed forward with her blade, continuing the exchange while releasing her own freezing technique. In the next instant, frost spread over the sword, and the edge became wrapped in a layer of bitter cold. Ice sword. While parrying the freezing blade, Jean Runcandle spoke in an almost cheerful tone. I didn't expect you to bring out your trump card right from the beginning. His voice sounded light, but his grip remained steady as he deflected each strike. What rotten luck for me, he went on with a faint grin. I'm the youngest son, and I haven't even learned the clan's secret techniques yet. What am I supposed to do now? Ceres Dorma only stared at him with cold, unimpressed eyes before giving a sharp snort, clearly refusing to be provoked by his sarcasm. Then she poured strength into both arms, brought her sword down in a heavy slash, and shouted, That's not my problem. At first glance, it really did seem as though Ceres Dorma was controlling the fight and steadily taking the upper hand. She attacked again and again, each strike pressing forward with force, while Jean Runcandle did nothing but parry and step back. Yet that was the strange part. No matter how fiercely she came at him, she simply could not land a clean hit. Jean Runcandle. By now, Ceres Dorma had also started to assess him more clearly. What a monster of a swordsman, she thought. It didn't even look like he was trying. The longer they fought, the more his real skill seemed to reveal itself, little by little. Still, she clenched her teeth and told herself it didn't matter. It would all be useless in the end. That one-star difference can be overcome by my countless ice swords, she thought. Since I'm weaker overall, I also have less stamina. I can't drag this fight out forever. The moment he starts counterattacking after fully reading my movements, I'll change the rhythm, switch techniques, and finish him before he can settle in. Ceres Dorma was still only a 4-star knight. Even if she could unleash countless ice swords again and again, Jean Runcandle judged that she would still lose to him in both offense and defense if the fight stayed straightforward. That gap was real, and no amount of pride could erase it. Having realized that difference herself, Jean Runcandle was certain she would soon explode forward to force a change in tempo. She would probably bring out a secret technique next. The only thing he had not fully grasped yet was exactly how powerful her countless ice swords technique could become at full release. If that was the case, then he would have no choice but to answer her secret art with one of his own. Among all the secret techniques he had studied in the Storm Castle archive, the strongest one he had managed to grasp was only a single move. As that thought passed through his mind, a soft, almost gentle smile slowly appeared on Ceres Dorma's face. That faint smile sat strangely on her lips, cold and calm at the same time, like a sign that she had already decided the outcome in her own mind. It's over, Jean Runcandle, she said. The instant she spoke, her figure vanished from right in front of him, leaving behind nothing but a brief puff of white vapor drifting in the air. Then an enormous surge of power crashed down from above, so heavy and sudden that it shook the arena and sent another fierce shock wave blasting outward. The pressure of it felt crushing, like winter itself had fallen from the sky. Jean Runcandle braced himself and tried to endure that descending force head-on. As her sword drove down, the air around them froze and shattered, turning into a storm of sharp ice fragments that glittered like broken glass in the light. At the center of that mound of jagged ice stood Ceres Dorma, cold and severe. She seemed to appear closer and closer with every heartbeat, as if the blizzard itself were carrying her forward, and a chilling smile touched her lips. Then, all at once, Jean Runcandle bared his teeth and laughed. It was not a forced laugh or a bluff. It was the excited grin of someone whose blood had finally started to race. Seeing that, Ceres and Dorma was visibly startled and confused. He's laughing? She thought. I already used Snowstorm. Even a 5-star sword prodigy at 15 shouldn't be able to endure a secret technique from the secret palace this easily. The sight of him smiling in the middle of it made no sense at all. So why do I feel this uneasy? The question dug into her mind at once. Jean Runcandle's reaction shook her more deeply than she wanted to admit, and that irritation quickly turned into a faint but very real sense of psychological pressure. And in that exact moment, the tip of a sword suddenly thrust straight toward the space between her eyes. Why? The thought flashed through her mind in pure shock, because for an instant she could not understand how he had broken through it all. Instinct screamed at her before reason could catch up. She twisted her body and jerked to the side, barely dodging the deadly strike by a hair's breadth. The attack was so close that it felt as if death itself had brushed past her skin. At that point, cold sweat was already pouring down her face as she stared at Jean Runcandle's blade, which was beginning to crack under the strain. Even so, the pressure coming from him did not lessen in the slightest. Damn it! This time, horror spread across Jean Runcandle's face as well. Then a piercing scream split through the arena, sharp enough to make everyone nearby stiffen. Ceres and Dorma. Right after that, a massive shock wave burst outward from the clash between the two of them and rolled violently across the surrounding area, rattling everything in its path. After unleashing that earth-shaking technique, Jean Runcandle gritted his teeth and immediately blamed himself. The moment the attack finished, regret hit him harder than the recoil in his arms. Damn it! I shouldn't have used the clan's storm of blades. How is a prodigy like Ceres and Dorma supposed to endure something this destructive? The thought struck him with sudden force, and his expression tightened. If she failed to dodge, she would either die or be crippled. Thinking that, Jean Runcandle hurriedly searched through the wreckage and called out, Ceres and Dorma. The arena floor was torn apart with pits and cracks everywhere. Then he found her. She was kneeling on the ground, using her sword to support herself, her body trembling slightly amid the destruction. Ceres and Dorma's face was frozen in shock, not at Jean Runcandle, but at herself. I chose my own life, she realized. I was afraid of dying, and so I dodged. In that moment, she seemed unable to accept the truth of what had just happened inside her own heart. Jean Runcandle had also suffered several wounds, but he still walked toward her and reached out, worried despite everything. Are you all right? I almost killed you. I'm sorry. His voice had lost all mockery now. What remained was plain, sincere concern. The expression on his face at that moment was hard to describe. He had warned Ceres and Dorma, yet she still had not tried to escape the sword storm until the last instant. But no matter how fiercely she valued pride and honor, she was still only a 15-year-old girl in the end. She was simply too young to completely crush her instinct to survive. The desire to live rose up before anything else, and when the final moment came, her body answered that truth honestly. Jean Runcandle placed a hand on Ceres and Dorma's shoulder and tried to reassure her in a gentler voice. If I were in your place, I would have moved too. He spoke carefully, as though trying not to wound her any further. For my own life, I know I would have done exactly the same thing. So please, don't torment yourself over this anymore. Even as he said it, he wondered in confusion whether words like that could really comfort her at all. A moment later, Ceres and Dorma suddenly pulled out a small vial from her clothes. Jean Runcandle immediately recognized it. It was the very same wound ointment from before, the one that had already become strangely familiar between them. She opened the vial and, in a much quieter voice than before, said, Your face is hurt. There was no arrogance in her tone now, only a calm seriousness. Ceres and Dorma carefully applied the medicine to Jean Runcandle's face with gentle hands. I'll use this to repay you for saving my life, she said. Jean Runcandle, still trying to steady her shaken heart, answered softly. As the only successor of the secret palace, aren't you treating your own life far too lightly? After finishing with the ointment, Ceres and Dorma stood up slowly and brushed the dust from herself. Then she explained in a low, steady voice, "Because this is a life I begged for. From now on, I will value my life again. So don't worry about any of that. More importantly, let's just treat today as the first day we've truly met." With those calm but decisive words, she turned without another glance and walked away with firm, unhesitating steps. "See you tomorrow." Jean Runcandle also rose from his seat and quietly pressed his lips together as he watched her retreating figure disappear into the distance, his eyes lingering on her back a moment longer than he expected. The next day arrived faster than expected. When morning gave way to the gathering in the hall, the place was already filled with guests here and there, though there were clearly fewer people than there had been the day before. Jean Runcandle stood by himself with a glass of wine in hand, calmly drinking while sorting through his thoughts. Starting today, everyone will be allowed to watch the matches openly. So this is probably when the real movement begins, and when the atmosphere at the party starts to change. There are fewer spectators now, which might actually work in my favor. If things go well, I may be able to run into some of those Zipple clan members without too much trouble. I heard the guests from the Zipple clan are all between 15 and 20 years old. Perfect. If they're around my age, then I should be able to measure their magical ability against my own and get a clearer sense of where I stand. I did want to ask a few things related to Colin, but doing that right now would only draw unnecessary attention. Still, once I become a reserve flag bearer, I'll finally have more freedom. And when that happens, I can investigate Colin properly with Murakin. With Murakin's help, finding the Mona Fountain won't be difficult either. This time, those bastards from the Zipple clan won't be able to casually send out a massive group of mages and push everything the way they did before. This time, I'll stop that horrible tragedy before it even has the chance to happen. As he walked forward with that thought heavy in his mind, Jean suddenly noticed a black cat standing still nearby, quietly watching something. Jean Runcandle immediately froze. Then, almost at the same time, someone nearby blurted out in surprise, "Why is there a cat at the Runcandle clan's ball?" Ceres and Dorma quickly scooped up the black cat in her arms, gently stroking it as she asked with bright curiosity, "Where is your owner?" The cat, clearly enjoying the attention and warmth, let out a pleased little meow in response. At that moment, Ceres and Dorma noticed the name tag hanging around its neck and tilted her head as she read it aloud. "Let's see. Your name is Butterfly. Butterfly Runcandle. Did the young master give you that name?" From behind her, Jean Runcandle stared with eyes glowing like car headlights in the dark and replied in a low, grim voice, "That's right." "Oh, so it's that cat. I knew that if I followed this cat around, I'd eventually find you." The voice came from behind them, cheerful and shameless enough to make both of them turn at once. Veridin Zipple came bounding toward them in excitement, arms flung open almost like an overexcited monkey. "We finally meet, Jean Runcandle. You have no idea how long I've been looking for you." Jean, however, only looked at him coldly and asked, "Who are you?" Veridin Zipple looked genuinely wounded by that answer. "I can't believe you'd say that right after we meet again. How could you forget me? I think about you every single day." Ceres and Dorma, still holding the cat, watched the bizarre exchange with wide, bewildered eyes. Veridin Zipple kept going anyway. "Fine, then I'll give you a hint. Try guessing the first letter of my name." Ceres could only turn away with a tired sigh. "What a weirdo. Let's go, Butterfly." Even the cat seemed to wear a helpless expression. "Well then, do you at least remember that customer?" Veridin Zipple still sounded hopeful, clinging to the possibility that Jean might recognize him. Jean Runcandle, however, crushed that hope immediately with a single flat answer. No. That one word drained the energy right out of Veridin Zipple, but he still forced himself to offer another clue. "Damn it, then try again. The place where we first met was the teleportation gate of the Meadow Kingdom." Jean Runcandle still refused without the slightest change in expression. "I don't remember." At that point, Veridin Zipple could only stand there looking helpless and offended, letting out a dissatisfied little "Umph." Then he grabbed Jean Runcandle by both shoulders and shook him lightly. "Seriously. Hey, Jean. Your memory is way worse than I thought. Listen carefully, because this time you absolutely have to remember. My name is V." Before he could finish, Jean said it for him. "Veridin Zipple." Then Jean brushed Veridin Zippel's hands away and said in a cold, cutting tone, I tried very hard to act like I didn't know you. It should be obvious that I remembered and simply didn't want to deal with you. Why can't you understand that and stop bothering me? Even after hearing that, Veridin Zippel somehow stayed ridiculously cheerful. Oh, so you did remember after all. Jean Runcandle could only stare at him and quietly doubt the future. Is this idiotic bastard really going to become a 9-star mage by the age of 30 and be named the next head of the Zippel clan? Still completely unable to read the mood, Veridin Zippel continued chattering away. Anyway, I looked for you everywhere yesterday. I've even been searching for the last 2 hours today, and I still couldn't find even a trace of you. Jean replied with a dry voice. The ballroom may be large, but it's still just a ballroom. How exactly do you spend 2 hours wandering around in here? But Veridin Zippel only let out a long sigh and complained as if he were the wronged one. If I were allowed to use magic, I would have found you much sooner. But this is Runcandle territory, so using magic is forbidden, right? Hearing that, Jean Runcandle couldn't help wondering for a moment whether Veridin Zippel was lying or whether he was simply hopelessly bad with directions. But the more he looked at him, the more it seemed obvious that it was the latter. Then, without warning, Veridin placed a hand on Jin's head and kept talking. Anyway, I'm really glad to see you again, Jean. It's been 5 years, hasn't it? I can't believe you're already a 5-star. I knew you were talented. He grinned proudly and puffed out his chest. Of course, I haven't been wasting my time either as a mage. I'm already a 6-star now. Yes, I've reached 6-star. After hearing that confident declaration, Jean Runcandle only gave a vague, uncommitted, humph, without bothering to show any real reaction. Veridin Zippel smirked smugly. That puts me one whole level above your swordsmanship. But inwardly, Jean Runcandle was sneering. Unbelievable. The so-called greatest prodigy of the Zippel clan, and Veridin Zippel is only at 6-star at the age of 18? If I were in his position, I would have surpassed 7-star already. Is there some reason he has to lie about his rank, or is this really all there is to him? Suddenly, Veridin Zippel let out a strange laugh. Haha, that look on your face makes all the effort I put into finding you worth it. I'm really looking forward to the day I can compete with you, so make sure you train hard and catch up to me. Watching him say that so seriously, Jean Runcandle could only break into a faint sweat. No, I don't think he's hiding his rank at all. Whatever the case, if Veridin Zippel really only reached 6-star at the age of 18, then why did the current head of the Zippel clan, Celiac Zippel, place so much trust in him? Jean Runcandle narrowed his eyes. Since I'm bound to face the Zippel clan's monsters sooner or later, this is still a good chance to observe one of them up close and prepare myself for what lies ahead. After a brief moment of thought, Jean spoke up at once. Veridin Zippel, I've already told you this before, but please learn how to keep your mouth shut. Veridin only smiled even wider and replied, Oh, you talk just like my father. Then Jean asked the question that had been sitting in his mind all along. In the end, why did the Zippel clan come to this ball without even being invited? Veridin Zippel answered right away without hesitation. That was because of me. I kept pestering Uncle Andre, telling him I absolutely had to meet you. Jean Runcandle could only feel a deep, weary helplessness. Even though Andre Zippel is the vice clan head, he really came charging straight into enemy territory just because a child threw a tantrum. Veridin Zippel kept talking with the same restless excitement. We just happened to be traveling through the Huffest region when we heard news about the ball. The moment I heard it, I knew this had to be fate. Jean answered in a matter-of-fact tone. That's all. Yes, Veridin replied without even a hint of embarrassment.